Thanks for joining us for CBN News Watch. I'm Mark Martin. Today, what would it be like if you lost power in your home, perhaps permanently? We'll hear why that could happen because of a surprise attack on the U.S. Plus, we'll look at the heavy flooding in Vermont and the heat wave affecting much of the country, along with how a change in diet brought a man from a wheelchair back to health in just 3 months. We'll have an interview also with Oscar-winning actress Mira Sorvino from the faith-based hit movie Sound of Freedom. It's all today on News Watch.
This is CBN News Watch.
We begin with the possibility of a devastating attack on the U.S. that could affect your home. The heat wave in parts of the country is straining the nation's aging electrical power grid, and temporary brownouts may occur. But what would happen if the United States lost electricity permanently? Electro-magnetic pulse bomb experts warn America's enemies are already getting ready to launch such a strike. And Gary Lane explains why one expert believes such an attack is inevitable.
An electromagnetic pulse bomb, or EMP, is a nuclear weapon designed to explode high up in the atmosphere and knock out a country's electrical power grid.
Hits the Earth's surface, feeds into our electrical wiring, it starts shorting out the entire power grid. If they launch 3 missiles, eastern, central, western United States, it would shut our grid down permanently.
Historian Dr. William Forstchen is a New York Times best-selling author and expert on EMPs. His new novel is 5 Years After, a political thriller about the aftermath of such an attack. Most people assume Russia or China would be the countries most likely to target the U.S. with an EMP. However, Forstchen believes North Korea is the more likely culprit. Nuclear weapons expert the late Peter Pry agreed. 5 years before his death in 2022, Pry warned that Kim Jong-un's launch of a high-altitude ballistic missile was a test of North Korea's EMP capabilities against the United States.
The Japanese and South Korean military both described it as practicing for an EMP attack because it was burst on ascent deliberately by the North Koreans when it was at an altitude of about 71 kilometers.
The higher the altitude of the missile, the wider the area of destruction. Pry explained how it would devastate an unprepared United States of America.
Cars would be paralyzed. Airplanes could fall out of the sky. You'd have natural gas pipeline explosions, nuclear reactor overloads. And worst of all, if you had a protracted blackout, it would be a serious threat to the survival of the American people.
No electricity means no pumps to provide enough water needed to irrigate and grow crops. And since America only has a 30-day reserve food supply, 90% of the population would likely die within 1 to 2 years of the EMP attack. So what can be done to protect the nation? Recent legislation sets aside $13 billion to upgrade the U.S. energy grid. But finding the needed replacement parts may be difficult.
All those spare parts we need, the big transformers, where do you think they're made? China. We farmed out all the components of our electrical grid decades ago.
Forstchen says history proves that societies always use the weapons they develop. He warns the United States cannot sit back and assume an EMP attack will never happen. Why do you think this is likely even imminent?
Sooner or later, somebody's going to try to do this. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but at some point it will happen.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
In other news, severe weather is still hammering the country as catastrophic floodwaters are pouring through Vermont and other parts of the Northeast, and more rain is on the way. Meanwhile, landslides destroyed about a dozen homes in California, with more at risk. And on top of all that, intense heat continues to bake the Southwest. Wendy Griffith brings us that story.
President Joe Biden has declared a state of emergency in Vermont, where torrential rainfall triggered historic and catastrophic flooding, the worst in nearly 100 years, and more wet weather is on the way. In Montpelier, the state capital, cars floated down streets. Homes and businesses like Andrew Mullins washed out after the area was pounded with at least 8 inches of rain.
There's about 7 feet of water inside Sam's, to the point that you can barely see the ice machine flipped over, just from the power of the water coming through.
Vermont's Winooski River cresting at just over 21 feet, the highest since 1927. The rain also washing away the earth underneath this railroad track. Paula Schwartz and her family fled their home in Ludlow, her neighbor taking a kayak to check on it for them.
My next door neighbor, they're in the house and they can't get out.
Crews rescued more than 100 people, taking them to dry land.
In many areas, the water conditions remain too dangerous for rescue by boat.
On the other side of the country, a stunning scene in California's Los Angeles County. A major landslide, at least 12 homes already destroyed or condemned, many falling, collapsing into a ravine. They're now watching at least 16 more homes in Rolling Hills Estates after the ground started shifting Saturday, moving 20 feet in 24 hours.
And today you can hear the creaking, the cracking, the crumbling, and they're going to fall.
Meanwhile, 65 million people from Florida to California are under heat alerts. Phoenix is expecting the 13th consecutive day of temperatures of 110 degrees or higher. Most of California is seeing temperatures more than 15 degrees above normal. Meteorologists predict the heat wave will reach record highs across 10 states later this week and into the weekend. The Northeast bracing for more rain by Thursday and Friday. Wendy Griffith, CBN News.
Coming up, this man was suddenly struck with colitis, lost 80 pounds, and wound up in a wheelchair. See how a change in his diet took him from 100 pounds to 170 in just 12 weeks. We'll bring you his amazing transformation when we come back. Welcome back to NewsWatch. Jordan Rubin was just 19 years old when he was suddenly struck with severe colitis. Over a 2-year period, he lost 80 pounds along with the ability to walk. Then in just 3 months, Jordan went from a wheelchair to working out. Lori Johnson explains how a change in diet completely transformed his health.
While serving as a Bible camp counselor, Jordan Rubin became suddenly ill with an inflammatory bowel disease so severe it eventually caused him to lose 80 pounds and the ability to walk.
I didn't understand how a young man who was living for God, I didn't do all the normal things that people do at college. I was ministering to people. I wanted to go into ministry. And here I was having a fate that I considered worse than death.
After being diagnosed with Crohn's colitis, Jordan saw dozens of doctors over a 2-year period. Then he met gastroenterologist Joseph Brasco.
It was curious to me that he didn't really seem to have any good response to anything.
That changed, however, when Dr. Brasco helped Jordan adopt a diet to help balance his gut microbiome. That's the ecosystem of good and bad bacteria in the intestines that scientists have discovered can have wide-ranging health implications. The key for Jordan was to follow a diet putting lots of good bacteria called probiotics and other healthy foods into his system while staying away from items that led to the growth of bad bacteria.
12 weeks after I started this plan, I went from 100 plus pounds in a wheelchair to 170 pounds on my 21st birthday, working out on the beach.
Now, years later, the two are sharing the plan that turned Jordan's life around in the book, The Probiotic Diet.
When I was healed, I knew that God had now purposed me to share this message of health and hope with his people all over the world.
The diet is for people struggling with all kinds of digestive problems.
Fatty liver, diverticular disease, certainly irritable bowel, chronic constipation, chronic diarrhea. These are the kind of bread and butter conditions that we see in the office here. And I do believe that these are greatly improved with, if not completely eradicated, with a diet like the probiotic diet.
It begins with taking a daily probiotic supplement, then moving to consume the various foods and beverages containing these healthy bugs.
Think about cultured or fermented dairy, yogurt, and kefir, which is available everywhere. Even high-quality sour cream has probiotics, and cottage cheese has probiotics. Sauerkraut, kimchi and pickles if they're made the right way. Apple cider vinegar has probiotics, kombucha, kvass.
While many of these items may seem new, most are actually very old.
Fermented foods have been part of the human culture forever. Maybe the last century or so, that we've started to move away and become so fearful of bacteria and not realizing there are things that are actually good bacteria.
Probiotic foods were very popular in the Bible. And so if you hear about Sarah killing the fatted calf, getting curds, or David delivering to his brothers against the Philistines curds, they weren't simply cheese. This would have been a yogurt or a kefir or perhaps a cheese.
Since the good bacteria are alive, like most living organisms, they need food called prebiotics to survive and reproduce. Fiber, like the kind found in vegetables, helps that good bacteria to thrive in our system. So the diet includes those veggies and other fiber-rich foods like fruit, beans, and whole grains. While a healthy gut microbiome involves adding lots of good bacteria and fiber to our diet, it also involves subtracting some other items. Those include processed foods and sweets, which can lead to a bad bacteria takeover.
We've had many people, and they come in with chronic GI disorders, and we say, look, just get rid of sugar, and please don't add sugar substitutes. We see them back a month, 6 weeks later, and the vast majority of them are significantly better.
So while millions look for relief from painful digestive problems, for some it can be found in the form of an ancient diet full of fermented selections and whole foods created by God. Modern scientists recently discovered this old plan can help us feel better by achieving the right balance of good and bad bacteria in our body. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Still ahead with the hit movie Sound of Freedom still going strong at the box office. We'll have our Studio 5 conversation with Oscar-winning actress Mira Sorvino, who plays a key role in the movie as the wife of the former government agent who works to rescue children from human trafficking. We're going to hear about her own life-saving work right after this. Thanks for staying with us. Sound of Freedom is still going strong at the box office, finishing #1 Monday with $4 million, bringing its total take to over $45 million. It's the story of former government agent Tim Ballard, who has given his life to rescuing children from human trafficking. Ballard's wife is a big part of this story, and actress Mira Sorvino plays that role in the film. CBN Studio 5 sat down with her to talk about her own life-saving work on and off the big screen.
How many pedophiles you got?
288.
How many kids you found?
So, as an actress in this film, what's it like now when you're sitting in the audience with people watching the story play out? What's it do to you?
I think that the general emotion of the film really hits hard when you see it on a big screen. I actually hadn't seen the film before.
She's just Miranda's age.
Imagine walking into a room right now, seeing an empty bed.
But to see people like visibly, like, you know, their hearts in their throats, like watching this unfold and understanding the reality of 2 million children in the world who are trapped in child sex exploitation right now, who are being trafficked and sold to evil people who have not one whit of compassion or empathy for them as human children. It was powerful.
One of the things that you've said I'd like to hear again, because I think it's powerful, is this idea that we see this problem and we just assume that they're lost causes,
right,
and there's nothing we can do.
I think that the human brain has a hard time understanding coming back from something so horrific as child rape of small children. I mean, it's so dark that we're just like, oh, those poor children, oh, but almost like they're already dead. You know, like we turn away because we're just like, we feel powerless to help. and so horrified that we'd rather not think about it, you know? And, you know, that's where the traffickers win. That's where the evil people win. And, you know, we all have to rise up and be so disgusted and so moved to help these people that we change the equation for them and we give them that hand out of this trafficking situation, which right now only 0.4% of all trafficking victims in the world enjoy. Only 0.4% of trafficking victims get discovered, rescued, or exited themselves. The 99.6% are going to be trafficked for life or till they, like, you know, get sick or age out or die.
So you thought of that? Of doing it on your own?
I won't be on my own. I just have to convince Pablo.
Okay. So, you quit your job, and you go and rescue those kids.
I've met these trafficking survivors in my role as Goodwill Ambassador for the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime on Human Trafficking that have inspired me so much. Their ability to rebound with the proper aftercare, and that's where we also need to take our energy after we see something like this and start helping the people who are already doing the good work on the ground and joining forces with them. I've seen these girls and women and men who come out of this who are brave and confident and smiling and inspired and hopeful, even if they battle with these horrific traumatic memories. But they've gotten a lot of love from other people, and now they're leading a path in their own life to fulfill the destiny that God meant for them and to help bring everybody else who's still stuck. Like almost every single one that I've met has this resurrection story where they're like, they've risen above, even though it's very, very hard. And it's all to their credit that they're able to find that inside themselves, to find that in their soul, to rise up and be like, I can do this. I can not be trapped in what was done to me, but I can, you know, embrace my life and be of help to others. Like, they're just my heroes.
It is the fastest growing international crime network that the world has ever seen.
I know that this is a tall order, but we need a heart change. We need a civilization heart change, you know. We grow, you know, in stutter steps, I think, over the centuries, over the millennia. And this is our time to say no to slavery and no to exploitation.
It has already passed the illegal arms trade, and soon it's going to pass the drug trade. Because you can sell a bag of cocaine one time to a child, 5 to 10 times a day. God's children are not for sale.
Powerful movie. Very disturbing story. Well, also tonight on Studio 5, a first look at the new faith-based romantic comedy called Divine Influencer, and a look at a documentary called Black Ice about racism in hockey and how the church has helped to bridge that divide. You can catch it all on Studio 5 on the CBN News Channel tonight at 8:30 Eastern. You can also watch it on the CBN News app or on YouTube. Coming up, 5 months after the devastating earthquake struck Turkey, killing tens of thousands and leaving more than 1 million homeless, CBN's Operation Blessing is still on the scene helping those in need. We're going to have that story for you when we come back. Stay with us. 5 months ago, massive earthquake struck Turkey. More than 50,000 people died in the disaster, and more than 1 million were left without homes. Teams from Operation Blessing were among the first to respond with food and water, and OB workers are still on the ground helping survivors rebuild their lives. Lucille Toulousem brings us that story.
Aklem recalls feeling terrified as big rocks fell on their house during the powerful earthquake. She quickly grabbed her children and ran out of the house before it collapsed. But her mother-in-law was trapped inside and suffered a harsh blow to her head.
I was terrified to see my mother-in-law's face covered with blood. She was not responding and I thought we lost her. It was a scary day.
Layla needed 17 stitches on her head and spent 17 days in a coma. Aklem is thankful their family survived, but the hardship continued as they were forced to live with 30 other survivors in a greenhouse.
It is very hard. We lost everything and are starting from scratch.
Another survivor, Hakan, also lost everything, including his coffee shop.
It's been traumatic for me to see my friends' lives destroyed and so many lives were lost. There's so much sadness here, but I don't want to leave the city. I want to see the city rebuilt, but I don't have much hope.
Hope is what Operation Blessing brings to earthquake survivors during this time of rebuilding in Turkey. OB is providing micro-enterprise grants to help people like Hakan overcome their losses and begin taking care of themselves.
There is water and food as a need for the people, but what they really need right now is to generate some sort of income, to bring them some dignity.
Operation Blessing built a coffee shop for Hakan. It may not be as big as what he had, but it came complete with appliances and supplies that got him back in business.
It really touched me that someone from another part of the world who doesn't even know me comes all the way here to help.
Operation Blessing also installed water filter systems in tent cities to help supply clean water during the hot summer. Ministry teams also continue to provide food and tents for survivors. Aklem is overwhelmed with the private space they now have, complete with a cabinet, dining table, a carpet, and a bed. She said Operation Blessing has made their life more comfortable and they no longer have to sleep on the floor. Lucille Talusan, CBN News.
Operation Blessing is amazing. Praise God. If you would like to support Operation Blessing as it helps people in need around the world and here at home, go to ob.org. Well, that's going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our news programs on the CBN News Channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen by emailing newswatch@cbn.com. Or you can talk to us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Hope you'll join us next time. Have a great day.